The following program is for informational and educational purposes only and is not to be considered legal advice. Fraudsters Radio was created to expose the many scams and frauds that have so infected society today. Scammers, fraudsters, and rip-off artists abound, whether it's scamming homeowners with bogus foreclosure relief services, dating fraud, incompetent lawyers, or consumer rip-offs. It's high time the public has a voice. If you work in a profession that deals with fraud, or if you believe you were or are a victim of fraud, you now have a radio listening public that wants to hear from you. Please feel free to message us through our Fraudsters Radio Facebook page, and we may have you on the show as a guest. If you'd like to call in for today's show, the number is 646-668-8512.
And welcome to Fraudsters Radio Show. I am Laurie Z, nationally syndicated radio host and consumer advocate. And with me is my co-host, Storm Bradford, owner of Mortgage Fraud Examiner. Storm, good to have you back on the show.
Yeah, Laurie, how are you?
I'm doing all right. We have a pretty good show today because we're going to be talking about fire, arson, fraudulent insurance claims, and prevention. And so my special guest today is Zsolt, Sapy. We're going to call him Z for short. He is the Chief Operating Officer from Smoke Alarm Monitoring. And Z, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Laurie.
You're welcome. All right. Now, I want to actually play a short, very short clip because I think it will scare you. So let's do that now.
911, what's the address of the emergency?
There's a fire on 1250 State Route 50. Come on, please.
1250?
1250 State Route 50.
Is everybody out of the house?
No! We're stuck in the house.
Where are you at inside the house?
Me and my little brother are in the bathroom.
That's Matt pleading for help. He and his brother Jordan were caught, choking, and desperate to get out as their Miami Township home burned.
All right, so that's pretty scary to listen to for all of us. Now, I don't know, have either of you ever actually had a smoke dispatch or a fire alarm from your house?
Yeah, this is Z. I could tell you I've had false alarms like most of us had, but lucky enough, we did have systems in place where if there was a fire, we would be able to get out.
Right. And Storm, have you ever had one?
No.
Well, you're now, you have to think about that, huh?
And no, I was like, I was looking for a place to knock on wood.
Yeah, well, you're lucky. I actually have had a fire dispatch. It was a false alarm. I didn't know that at the time. It was the worst 35 minutes of my life getting home because at the time my dog was in a crate and all I could think about was the smoke. You know, my dog is not far from the kitchen location. So literally it was a heart attack for me to get home and find out that what had happened was that the smoke detector that I had fallen off the wall because it wasn't hard mounted. And here in Florida with the humidity, after a couple of years, it fell off the wall and it even broke the panel like nothing worked. But when I got here, thank God, everything was okay, and I had the fire department in my house. My veterinarian was here. I was the most panicked. My poor dog was in the crate going, "What's going on, Mommy?" You know. But it was a very frightening type thing. And when you listen to those 911 calls, which they often play on the news, it's scary. And, you know, I want to start, Z, I want to ask you, how did you actually get involved with smoke alarm monitoring?
Well, we've been in the life safety business for well over 30 years, and in addition to residential and commercial security, fire protection was one of the key features that we always offered and people really benefited from because it doesn't matter where you live, you're always going to be affected by potential fire, and having the right systems in place can save lives. Right,
and now, of course, we've got those California wildfires, which were supposedly arson. I have friends out in California, and, we kind of watch. They mark themselves safe. But a lot of times the fires are getting so close, and what's scary in those cases is that people are calling up from their homes, and the fire department actually seems unaware that the fire has gone to where the homes are located. Now, I wanted to ask you, do you have any statistics on house fires that maybe you could share with our listening audience?
Sure. Well, overall, there are about 1.3 million fires reported in the U.S., and of those, there are about 4,000, or I would say just under 4,000 civilian deaths, more than 15,000 injuries, and over $10 billion in property damage. But of those, 475 of those are structure fires, so home fires. And if you look at the comparison of 1.3 million fires with just over 3,000 deaths, 2,950 of them are from home fires, from structure fires. More than 12,000 of the injuries come from those fires, and almost $8 billion in property damage. So that really accounts for about 80% of the total damage, if not more, of the deaths just from the home fires. The rest are vehicle fires, outside fires, things like we're seeing right now in California. But the most damage and the most harm caused is from the house fires.
All right. Storm, do you have any questions?
No. That's an interesting statistic. That's very interesting.
It's a scary statistic, because I think most people, we're going to talk a little bit later in the show about prevention, but I think a lot of people don't have working smoke detectors. But what I do want to talk about is, the most common causes of house fires. Now, I have a list, but I don't know, Z, do you want to start? Do you have some things you could tell us about, the common causes of house fires?
Sure. So obviously you're going to have accidental fires, people leaving on the candles, leaving on the stove. You're going to have electrical fires, and that accounts for about 7% of the fires out there. You mentioned pets earlier, and about 1,000 fires are caused every single year by our little furry friends. And unfortunately, they are the ones that are also hurt the most because they can't pick up the phone, they can't get out of the house, so they're trapped in those house fires. So the statistics there are very, very high. About 500,000 of them are affected by smoke every single year. And then you have arson. And if you want, I could give you some of the statistics from arson, and it's pretty scary of how much it actually costs us. And when you break it down, we're looking at about almost 200,000 outdoor fires that they fall under arson, almost 50,000 home fires, and almost 13,000 vehicle fires. So we're looking at almost 440 civilian deaths due to fires that were set intentionally, more than 1,300 injuries, and more than $1 billion in direct property damage. So you're looking at about 10% of the overall cost resulting from arson.
Yeah, and now, arson I think is the most dangerous thing because the California wildfires. Last I heard, they're believing that was arson. Storm, I know you know more of the legal stuff. I mean, what happens if they catch that guy? Because you could never do anything to that guy to make up for what's happened.
From what standpoint? You can't do anything to get him.
Well, in other words, if they catch the arsonist that set the fires.
Well, I mean, even if you set fire to your own house, you can be prosecuted.
Okay. Well, with you being the expert and owner of mortgage fraud examiners, one of the things that I've read about is people set their own houses on fire. Like, if it's a mortgage foreclosure case, or if they, for some reason, want the insurance money. Can you maybe expand on that a little bit?
Well, I mean, clearly, again, even if you set fire to your own house, that would be insurance fraud if what you're doing is you're trying to collect money from the damage to your home. So, clearly anybody that would do that could be prosecuted and go to prison.
Okay. Now, I pulled up a list of some of the most common causes of house fires I wanted to share with you guys. And actually not on the list, which I thought were important, were cleaning out your dryer vents, because that's a top source of in-home fires. Another one is leaving the pizza box in the oven while the oven's still turned on or just going off. Those are two dangerous things. Cooking equipment. How many times do you cook things? I could tell you guys a story years ago where I was living at home. I was about 15. I boiled eggs and I forgot about them, and I went downstairs to work on a project. And then, of course, the smoke detectors went off, and we put it out, but the entire house just smelled of egg. And, of course, I couldn't fool my parents at that time from the smell of it. But cooking, if you are cooking and you don't set a timer, then obviously, you walk away, that's a fire hazard right there. Portable heaters. Now, I know people can knock them over. Pets can also do that, correct?
Sure, and one of the safety tips that we put out there is to remove the knobs from your stove. It's a very simple process, but especially larger breed dogs, they have no problem jumping up, sniffing out the bacon that was cooked on that stove in the morning, and by accident they turn on the knobs. And, of course, you left that candle burning to get rid of the smoke, to get rid of the smell from the bacon, and before you know it, you have a tragedy on your hands. So pets are, specifically the larger breeds, it's very easy for them to turn on those stoves.
Yeah, like my Great Dane. And interestingly, I saw on YouTube while I was doing some research this morning, someone had a remote camera, and it was facing their kitchen oven, and it actually showed the dog jumping up to try to get the pizza box, and, of course, it ignited. It was a gas stove. It ignited the pizza box, and so it went on fire. One of the other things on the list is smoking, and people who smoke in bedrooms, electrical equipment like a toaster, faulty wires, things like that. Candles, people who leave the candles in the room and forget all about it, and bingo, bango, there's another one. Children is another one, because children, they don't always know what fire actually is. So they may be playing with candles, and that's something you got to keep away from kids. Either of you, do you know a little bit about faulty wiring, like if wiring isn't done properly in the home?
Go, Z.
Sure. So if you look at a lot of homes that were built several years ago, there's a reason that they update the fire codes, and a lot of it has to do with wiring that is not set up to handle the amount of current that's going through these homes these days. You have many more devices that are attached to each one of those circuits. So it's very important to make sure that your wiring in your home is not only up to code, but it's also in good condition. Because after several years, they will dry out, and especially if you have some rodents or any little animals crawling through those spaces, your cat's playing with the wiring, dogs chewing on them. These are all hot buttons that we need to focus on to make sure that we have a safe home.
Right. And, another one is barbecues. Now, a lot of people, barbecue like in their lanai or in their terrace, like dangerous places to barbecue, and then when the fire hits, oops, too late. Another one was flammable liquids, keeping flammable liquids. That makes me think of people who, and I know people have done this, they go out, if there's going to be a big storm here in Florida, they go out and they buy gasoline and put it in containers, and then they put it in their garage, and if something goes wrong, that could also, blow everything up. And also I know that lights, like lampshades and things like that. Any other things you could think of that cause fires?
Well, when you were talking about gasoline, you're right on target. People store gasoline in their sheds and in their garages, and if they're not properly sealed, it's not the gas that explodes, it's the fumes. So all you need is an open container, and the fumes start filling that space. Even the slightest spark could set it off. So those are very dangerous things, and people need to be aware of the fumes coming out, not just the liquids.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if local fire departments actually ever send people out to people's homes to see, what kind of fire hazards there are, but it would be a good idea. What I want to do, though, is I want to go to a quick commercial break. So stay with us. We're talking the hot topic today, fire. Stay with us.
Have you received a notice of foreclosure on your property? Do you suspect that you're involved in an unfair or fraudulent loan agreement? Are you looking for a way to save your home? Would you like to cut through all the misinformation and find out what really works? Would you like to learn strategies that the so-called gurus aren't aware of? If you answered yes to any of those questions, a professional team at Mortgage Fraud Examiners can assist you and your attorney with all of these things and more. Contract breaches, errors, statutory regulatory violations, fraudulent appraisals, and other fraudulent conduct cause most mortgages to be legally problematic. In fact, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation found that nearly 2,000 financial institutions they assessed received citations for significant compliance violations. They also examined appraisals and found out that of the 259 appraisals reviewed for accuracy, only 7 fully complied with professional standards. Call us at 844-920-7200. That's 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, 844-920-7200.
And we're back on Fraudsters Radio. Got Storm Bradford, co-host with me, and I have Zsolt Sapy from Smoke Alarm Monitoring, and we're talking about anything to do with fire, fraud, arson. We're going to talk about prevention more towards the end of the show. Now, Storm, I want to ask you, what would your legal definition of insurance fraud be?
Well, I mean, anything. I really can't give you a legal definition, if you will, but I mean, it's more of a common sense definition, is that, any type of insurance fraud is when you're trying to defraud the insurance company. It can be a lot of different ways. They have people, they have people that, which is another scam, where what they'll do is they'll have a car driving in front of you and for no reason slam on the brakes, and then you bang the back of the car, and then they fall out of the car and they swear up and down that their neck hurts or their back hurts or whatever the alleged malady is. Then they try to hit your insurance company up for pain and suffering and that kind of stuff. But it's just it's just a basic common sense definition that you're trying to defraud the insurance company.
Right, and so I've been reading a little bit on this topic too. It says it happens when the insured makes a false, exaggerated, or deliberate injury or a loss claim to wrongfully receive compensation or other benefits. So people are doing it intentionally. Do you know, since you kind of work in foreclosure world, have you heard any stories of people who their homes were in foreclosure and they went, well, you know what, let's just get rid of it?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of those where they basically set their places on fire, hoping to collect on the insurance money. But it's never going to work because, and Z would probably have a better insight into this. But they have the investigators now. They can usually find what the cause of the fire was. And if it comes back to the homeowner, they're going to start questioning them to find out how and why that fire started.
Gotcha. Any comments to that, Z?
Yeah, Sean's right on the money. These days, the forensic tools available to the investigators are very advanced, and it's not as easy as just lighting a match and having that home burn. They will find out what led to that fire, and most of the time it will lead back to somebody that profited from it, whether it's a contractor or the homeowner. And it's not just about a total loss. It's about exaggerating, like you said, Laurie, exaggerating the claim. It might be $100 worth of damage, and they put in a claim for $4,000. And that way their deductibles are covered, they put some money in their pocket, and some money goes back to the homeowner. And that could be the contractor filing the claim for them.
Now, one of the things I think of is, if your house were to burn down, whether it was arson or legitimate, I would think for insurance, you have to be able to present receipts and things like that to, collect on the insurance. But most people actually keep their receipts in the house. So I think that could be a problem, because basically you could, anyone, if their house burned down, could say, I had thousands and thousands of dollars worth of equipment, and now to try and get all of that, pulled up to collect on the claim could be a problem. So one of the things I want to talk about a bit are some of the examples of insurance fraud. And, in some cases, accidents can be staged. So, they're doing it, they're intentionally destroying property, trying to receive a greater value back in the return in the form of an insurance payout, or they can hide property and then stage a burglary or break-in and claim the items were lost or stolen. So that's the stage type accident. And then we talked a little bit about the exaggerated claims, where they inflate what it is so that they can try and collect more. Now, one of the things I was reading about here in Florida is that the arson actually they're saying is like 10 to 20%. In Florida, everything is higher, I think, when it comes to fraud. It seems to have more fraud than other states. Actually, Z, do you have any stories of fires that you want to share?
Well, there was one account, and I didn't experience this firsthand, but we read about it in one of our reports, where there was a fire reported. The homeowner put in a big claim, and when the investigator came back with the report, they noted that all of the furniture was removed from the house prior to the fire. So it was pretty clear that these people were, starting the fire themselves to get out of that home. It was a foreclosed property. But before they did so, they wanted to save their own furniture. So, criminals in general are, let's be straight, they're stupid. They're always going to make some sort of error, some sort of mistake. And in some cases, they're very blatant. They're so greedy and they want to get away with everything. They actually removed all of the furniture from their home before they burnt it down. So talk about giving yourself away.
Yeah, because then they have all the stuff, and somebody probably saw them do it to top it off. I don't know. It seems to me that the stupid people think they're going to get away with stuff, and they don't. So, there's a story back in 2015 that there was a home insurance fraud ring back in Miami, and they were charged with intentionally causing fires and floods in homes, and that cost insurers about $14 million. So what this group did was that they actively recruited homeowners willing to destroy their homes and file claims. And so the fraudster would get 20 to 30% of the settlement. And ultimately, one of the adjusters was accused of arson, forgery, racketeering, and grand theft, and faced more than 30 years in federal prison. So it seems like there's a lot going on. And I'm going to go back to Storm. Why? I mean, are these people nuts? Are they just greedy? Is there something mentally wrong with them that they're doing this? They just want the money, or a combination of everything?
I think it's a combination of everything. You and I both know that there's a lot of these scam groups and Facebook groups and different organizations in the country that come up with the craziest schemes in order to try to save houses, and these homeowners buy into it. There's an old, it's not a medical adage, it's basically a medical fact that the logic center of the brain shuts down when people are under a lot of stress. Well, foreclosure, produces a lot of stress in people, and then their logic centers shut down. They have these fraudsters and scammers that say, hey, look, you can do all these crazy things, and they'll try them out. And that's what ends up happening.
Right. Well, the scary part about that is, I know at least in your business, there are people who have these, I would call them fraudulent Facebook pages, because they're trying to, they're not even lawyers, although I guess in some cases there are some that are lawyers. There's a lot of non-lawyers that put together these Facebook pages to try to help people, but in reality they're actually hurting people. Now, I don't know if that happens in the case, with fire, but, we've all heard of the dark web, and so that's where people exchange information they don't want the public to see. But it makes me question, going back to our government, why aren't these pages shut down, and why doesn't anybody do anything?
That's a question for Zuckerberg. I mean, they're sitting here and they're closing down things that are allegedly hate speech coming from conservatives when it's absolutely absurd that they're doing this, but you'll have these pages where Facebook groups where they're saying that the bank never lent you any money, and every United States citizen has anywhere, I've heard figures from $600,000 to $100 million in a treasury account, where your Social Security number is the account number, and that you can use that account number to pay off your car, pay off your mortgages, pay off your student loans, and basically buy anything you want. And that stuff is allowed, where someone that's a conservative says, well, wait a minute, aborting babies is murder, and then all of a sudden they take these people's tweets down, they take their foreclosure comments down and everything else. So, to answer that question, why they do or don't do what they should be doing is a question for another day.
Fortunately, everybody has their own interests, including the companies. Like he was saying, the CEO of Facebook has his own personal political beliefs, and at the end of the day, nobody says that Facebook has to be nonpartisan. So unfortunately, you get them acting on whatever they want to do, and that really shouldn't be the case for an entity of that size, where it should be regulated to a point. But when it comes back to what we're discussing, it's not only about fraud for gaining profits or trying to scam the insurance company. I have read dozens of articles about the hero complex, where it's the fire chief or the fireman that sets the fire.
Yeah.
They want to be the hero knowing that they put it out. And where we live, we even had a local firehouse that was set on fire by one of the firemen, so he could be the first one there to respond. So it's not just about money. A lot of these folks, like you said, Laurie, they may have some mental issues that need to be dealt with that aren't being dealt with, and the results are fire and a lot of people getting...
I doubt that firehouses do any type of psychological exam. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, because I think you have to be a little crazy if you're going to run into a fire anyway and try to help people. There's almost got to be a craziness factor in the brain to, being able to do that.
Well, I more than respect anybody who volunteers their time and effort to run into a burning building. But you will have, just like any other job out there, you're going to have people that do it for the right reason, and then you have people that have some issues. And unfortunately, in these cases, those decisions will affect others' lives, property, and can cause a lot of damage.
Right. Now, I know I'm here in Florida, you're in New York, Storm is in Virginia. It's different every state, but I noticed here, like, the penalties and punishment in Florida for insurance fraud, if it's less than $20,000, the criminal penalty is a third-degree felony. If it's $20,000 or more but less than $100,000, it's a second-degree felony. And if it's $100,000 or more, the crime is a first-degree felony. Storm, can you explain what the difference is in these felonies, like third degree, second degree, and first degree?
It's actually down to what the penalty is the sentencing. A felony, a misdemeanor is the sentencing for that, or the time in jail for that is a year or less. A felony is a year or more. Usually with misdemeanors, you're looking at going to jail. When you're looking at felonies, you're going to prison. And also with felonies, you lose a lot of rights, like voting rights and the right to carry fire, to have a firearm and that kind of stuff. But when it comes down to first, second, and third degrees, that's usually a sentencing part, where a first-degree felony, you might get, 1 to 5 years. Second degree might be 5 to 10, a third, whatever, or vice versa. It's just more or less for the sentencing side of it.
Okay. All right. Well, let's do this, guys. Let's take a commercial break. We'll be back in just a moment.
there is a very high likelihood your mortgage contains an extensive error. At Mortgage Fraud Examiners, we know just how costly a missed opportunity can be. For almost 40 years, we have consulted, retained, and referred to by attorneys, lawyers, trial practitioners throughout the nation. Put another way, we are the trusted source for litigation support. A foreclosure is basically an allegation the homeowner breached the contract by failing to make timely payments. The contract is clear. The borrower promised they would make timely payments, and if they didn't, the lender could take the property. The only way to overcome the homeowner's breach is to show the lender breached first. Identify errors that would void the contract. Identify regulatory violations. Identify appraisal fraud and other fraudulent contact. And the only way to find these wrongs is to thoroughly examine the whole mortgage transaction. This meticulous examination of your mortgage transaction and appraisal can identify legal defects that would make your mortgage unenforceable and entitle you to compensation or even free title to your property. Call us at 844-920-7200. Mortgage Fraud Examiners, that's 844-920-7200. 844-920-7200.
With our special guest, Z. Laurie, take it away.
All right. Well, I want to go through now pet safety. We talked a little bit earlier about that, Z, and give some of the tips that could, lessen the risk. Because look at me, I've got a huge dog. I've got a Great Dane, my third Great Dane. Thank God none of them ever set fires. But when I think about it, they could. And so recently, through rescue, somebody that I know lost their home to fire and lost their dog. Talk about some tips to help lessen the risk when it comes to the pets.
Sure. So when it comes to pets, as I said earlier, the numbers are pretty staggering. More than 500,000 pets are affected by smoke every year, and about 10 times as many die in house fires every year as humans do, simply because they can't get out. And when that beeping smoke detector goes off, it might as well be like a death sentence. And what we really want to do is put programs into place that protect our pets. So we want to make sure that, number one, we want to test all of our smoke alarms, make sure they're working, replace them every 10 years. If we're using candles, make sure that you put them out before you leave the home or before you leave that space. More importantly, you may want to just use the electric ones, the ones that simulate a candle, and it's an actual little light bulb. Turn off all of your gas and electric appliances before you leave the home. And as we briefly went over before, remove the stove knobs, because you're cooking on that stove. It leaves behind the scent. We know how strong and powerful our pets' senses are. So if they smell that bacon or whatever you were cooking, they're curious. They want to go there and see if there's a free meal. They're going to start jumping around. They might not be able to see as high as the stovetop, but they may be able to reach it with their paws. And before you know it, they switch one of the knobs on, they turn it on, and the whole home becomes engulfed in fumes. And if there's any spark at all, you have a tremendous catastrophe on your hands. But even for minor conditions, as we said with the wiring, you could actually purchase a wire loom where you could put all the wiring in one specific area with all the computer cords, for example, into this protective casing. And that in itself might save the pets from the electrical fire or from electrocution. If you're going away for any period of time and you have a very active pet that sometimes doesn't want to be home alone and they cause some problems just tearing things up and running around, consider crating those pets for those times, because the risk is considerably higher than when you leave them home alone, out and about running. Now, I can tell you with our dog, the second we walk out that home, she goes up by the windowsill. She'll lay there for 6 hours watching the birds. We have friends whose pets will then go all over the entire house. They'll rip apart the kitchen. They'll look for food. They do a lot of damage. So those are the ones that are where you're at risk because of your pet. So try to restrict where they are, and if you're not going to crate them, put them in a safe area where you know they won't have access to a lot of these wires and especially parts of the kitchen. Many people will leave their pets in the kitchen, and that's where they fence them off, and that might be the most dangerous part of all. Make sure you have collars and tags on your pets, because if they do get out, we want to be able to track them back to their owners. And then when it comes to fire safety specifically, make sure you have the right smoke detectors in place. And many people may not realize this, but there are smoke detectors out there that are called ionization-based. And these were basically $5 to $10 less than the alternative, which is a photoelectric smoke detector. And the ionization-based ones, they don't usually go off until there's a flame. And I like to call them fire detectors because they're certainly not smoke detectors. Yet, these are the same devices that will go off all day long when you burn the toast or where you're painting the house. The fumes from the paint will set them off. But burning furniture, it might not set it off for 20 to 30 minutes. So, again, it's old technology. It does work, but it doesn't work the way it should for slow smoldering fires, which is usually the case. It starts off with smoke. It ends up as fire. Get the photoelectric ones. Make sure you check the batteries. And if at all possible, make sure that they're monitored smoke detectors, because then somebody could react for you even when you're not home.
Right. One of the things with pet safety I find is that, if you get down on your hands and knees, especially if you have a younger dog or a puppy, you have to think, what can that puppy get into? It's like having a toddler or an infant crawling on the floor. They can open up the kitchen counters underneath, we have poisonous things in it. You might have to put those little baby fasteners, that hold the cabinets closed. Like I said, my dog is a Great Dane. He's large. He can easily jump up and hit the stove. He can jump and hit what's on top of the refrigerator. And another thing, I know I've got a friend that's got a lot of cats, and I know that cats like to chew on wires. That can not only kill the cat, but that can also start a fire, can't it?
Absolutely. And that's what we said earlier. More than 1,000 house fires are started each year by pets, and a lot of that has to do with chewing the wiring.
Okay, and now I know another thing, too, is, and a lot of people don't think about this, what is your pet safety plan? Like if you have your house is on fire. That clip you heard earlier was from two boys trapped in a bathroom in the middle of a house that was on fire. Do you know anything about how to make a fire safety plan, and especially one that includes your pets?
Well, obviously putting a list together, keeping it updated, and making sure everybody's aware of what the procedure is to get out of that home, what are the safest exits, and then having a plan in place that includes your pets. And one of the easiest things to do is put signage outside of the home on a window or by the front door and back door, letting fire professionals and emergency services know that there are pets in the house. And that's not just pets. We want to make sure they're familiar with everybody that's in the house. Do we have elderly folks in there that may not be mobile? What type of pets? How many? Which ones should they keep aware of? So, for example, if you have a pet that is, you have the dog and the cat, but then you might have 4 snakes. These are very easy to include on that little door sticker, and it's something that we provide as a company to every one of our clients, and we give away all day long at our pet shows to make sure that people know that there might be 4 adults, 3 kids, 2 dogs, and a bird, and then additional instructions. Where might they hide? You have to remember that, pets, if they're fireworks, if there's thunder, they're going to hide somewhere, and it's usually in a space they consider comfortable and private and safe, and that might not be the best place for the firemen to find. So making them
All right, Storm, any questions?
Yeah, that was a pretty good explanation of what goes on.
All right. Well, I got more. I got, when a house goes on fire and it's the slow smoldering smoke, like when the couch is burning, it's the smoke inhalation that can actually kill the pet before the fire even gets there, correct?
No question. And that's what happens most of the time, which is why the statistics are 10 times as many as people, when it comes to pet deaths and pet injuries, because of the fact that they're home alone. And by the time that the fire services get out there, it's because the neighbor called the police or the fire department. They saw smoke coming out the window or out of the cracks of the doors. By then, the entire property could be engulfed in smoke, but there's still no flames. So the smoke dangers are significantly higher for pets than humans. And that's because we can get out.
Right, and I see sometimes, you'll see these news shows where they do get the dog out, but then they have to do the oxygen mask. So it seems like a lot of the fire departments now know first aid for dogs, and they carry the proper equipment, so to speak, to try and save the people's animals. And you also hear about the dogs that run into the firehouse, the property that's on fire, to try and save the people or wake the people up. But fire to me is a very scary thing because, if you don't think it'll happen to you. And when you think about, I think you have some statistics on this. I mean, what percentage of people don't have working fire detectors or smoke detectors?
Well over 75% of them don't have working smoke detectors. And that's also one of the reasons laws have changed over the years to force people to have 10-year smoke detectors. And if they're not monitored, then they need to be replaced every 10 years without question. But the biggest issue was the battery running low. People get annoyed by the beeping sound, and instead of replacing the battery because it's the middle of the night, they pull it down, they throw it into a drawer, they forget about it, and before you know it, there's a fire and they have nothing to protect them.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And I know, like last night, one of ours started beeping, the battery started beeping, and it's very annoying. So, I think a lot of people, they get frustrated with just replacing the battery and where, the smoke detector, if it's on the ceiling, you got to do a whole thing, get the ladder out. I'm in a house that has very high ceilings, so we have to borrow a ladder if we want to go and put, the battery back in the smoke detector, although some of them seem to be hooked up electrically and with the battery, because I have one that just goes crazy by itself. So, I'm obviously quite concerned. I have cameras into my house so I can actually see what's going on, but that's not going to sense the smoke like the smoke detector would.
Exactly. So, very important. Even if you have wired smoke detectors, those will have backup batteries, and you do want to make sure that they are all replaced when they need to be. We have our own products that we manufacture, and we put in safeguards that make people aware well ahead of that annoying beeping sound that they should replace their batteries. So a lot of these things are just very basic common sense things, but people don't think about common sense in the middle of the night. They just know that they were woken by that annoying sound, and they pull down that smoke detector and forget about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though. No one actually, even though there might be a law that says you have to have a smoke detector that has 10 years on it, who's actually making sure that it's working in your house? It's up to you to be responsible, right? Because the fire department is only going to come after it's too late.
Exactly. And that's why smoke detectors are one of those things that nobody really wants, but they need it. And it's rare that we do things that we need. We do a lot more things that we want. And if you give somebody the choice, would you rather, spend $20 on a smoke detector today because you need it, or $20 on that new thing that you saw on Facebook that everybody has to have and you have fear of missing out, you're going to buy that $20 item instead of that smoke detector that you absolutely need to save your pets, your family, and your property.
Yes, and that's really the more important thing. I
got a question for you, Zsolt. It appears to me where we spend I thought I saw an average the other day that people spend on the internet, for cable television and stuff like that, was in the vicinity of $100 plus. And it would appear to me that I know that monitoring systems are basically, something that can save your life. Why aren't more people getting systems that will monitor instead of just relying solely on a device that has a battery that fails in the majority of time, why not get that monitoring system for that low cost monthly? It doesn't even make a little bit of sense to me that most people aren't doing something that could save their life.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. 20% of consumers out there, they really they look at what needs to be done in their home. They always want to make sure that their homeowners insurance is paid up, their life insurance, their health insurance. And this is another form of insurance. Having that smoke detector in place that is monitored, and it'll cost you $10, $15, $20 a month. Even if it costs $40, think about the ramifications if it's not there. And most of the time, your insurance company will give you a discount on your premium to have a monitored smoke detector, because they know that the amount of claims they'll pay out are significantly lower. Yet people don't move forward and purchase those programs. A lot of that also has to do with legacy alarm systems, the old style programs where you have to commit to 5-year contracts, expensive equipment, and then you're paying $30, $40, $50 a month. But that's not the reality anymore. In today's date, especially with the products that we manufacture, for $14.95 per month, you're covered 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we make sure that if there is an event, call you, your neighbors, your family members, and if nobody responds, we're calling the fire department. And what is that, 3 cups of coffee in today's Starbucks?
Well, it's not only that so much, I mean, I look at it from a logical standpoint. Again, people pay. I know personally myself, we have in our house, we have the internet, and we don't have the pay like HBO and Stars and Cinemax and those. We just have the regular cable, and I just got the bill. It went up last month. It was $150-something to $223. I asked them why it was up to $223. Oh, well, your discount is gone now. So I'm looking at, they want me now to pay $223 basically to have internet and cable, and it strains credulity that for the high number of $40 a month, and that, that's got to do everything but kiss you goodnight for $40 a month. But even at $40 a month, it strains credulity. This is something that can save your life and or property. Why people aren't willing to do that? I'd be more than happy to cut my cable. I mean, there's nothing decent to watch on television anyway.
You're right.
I'm willing to cut that just to have a service where it's being monitored. And if I go away, I know I'm safe. Plus, you're also monitoring against burglary, not just fire.
Oh yeah, you're preaching to the choir. We see this every day where, especially in today's environment, people are canceling those $100, $200 cable bills. They're signing up for Netflix and internet to reduce their overall costs, but they won't spend $20 to protect their lives. So it really does come back to the want and the need. What do I want? I want to watch my show. Do I need a smoke detector that's monitored? Yes, I know I do, and I want to protect my kids and my pets and my property and everything else, and I'll do that next month. And you know when they sign up? When their neighbor's house burns down, or when they see something or read something that has affected somebody else in their life. That's when they might pick up the phone and say, you know what, I can't wait anymore. This is something I really need. But until that happens, until there's a wake-up call, a majority of the consumers out there will just say, it's not going to happen to me, so let me just keep watching my TV for $150 a month.
Well, I know, for example, Z, I collect old law books. I have some law books from the early 1800s. And I've often thought to myself that these things are priceless. That if I was to have a fire or something that catastrophic like that, I don't think a burglar is going to come in and steal old law books. So I'm more concerned about the fire, that if that thing goes off, it's being monitored. The fire department here is here in no time flat. I mean, for $20 a month, again, that's a no-brainer. Or it should be.
It should be, right?
It should be. It should. And, Z, I know we have a few minutes, but I want to talk about the difference between the photoelectric and the ionization smoke detectors. Can you kind of give me a quick summary, because yours is the photoelectric?
Yes, and the reason we chose photoelectric is because it does act on slow smoldering fires, or before there's a fire when it's just smoke, compared to ionization ones. As I said earlier, those will more act like fire detectors. There needs to be flames, the quick setting fires. Photoelectric ones are much more effective at preventing that big fire compared to the ionization ones that are identifying that there's already a fire in place. And the difference could be as much as 20 to 30 minutes. And also another big differentiator is the fact that photoelectric will go off when there's any type of smoke versus the ionization ones where, like I said, that there is a difference between smoke from burning toast and smoke from polyester or from a burning piece of furniture, from wood. And that will all determine when that old-style smoke detector goes off. So we wanted to make sure we had the best technology in our products and then add that remote monitoring to that, which is what we have the patent on. And it gives us the ability to offer consumers an extremely affordable, easy-to-install system that is protecting them 24 hours a day. And at the end of the day, it might not cost them anything because of the insurance discount.
Yeah, and what I read about your smoke detector is it works right out of the box. There's no credit check. And it's actually really, to me, it was really inexpensive for the detector and also for the monitoring. And then, like you said, if the insurance company picks up most of the monitoring, it costs almost nothing to even have this, right?
Yeah, so we sell the smoke detectors for $75 each, which is probably about $20 more than the regular beeping smoke detectors. It's about $50 less than some of our competitors that are self-monitored and they work through Wi-Fi, which to me is pretty useless because if it's an electrical fire, the Wi-Fi goes out and they're useless. So with our smoke detector, you take it out of the box, you test it real quickly to make sure there's a strong connection between the smoke detector and our central station monitoring center, and then you peel it and you stick it. That's it. If that system detects smoke, it instantly sends a signal through cellular networks, not through Wi-Fi. So no matter what is going on in that home, our system is independent of power and connectivity. So when that signal gets to our central station, we automatically send out a text message to everybody on the list. We could call the emergency contacts, which would be the primary homeowner, and then a neighbor, anybody that's close by that can react. And then if nobody responds telling us that they burnt the toast or it's a false alarm, we'll dispatch the fire department. And we'll do that 24 hours a day for $14.95 per month. And on average, you'll usually get anywhere from 5 to 10% off of your homeowner's premium for having a monitored smoke detector. So if you're paying $1,500 a year for your homeowner's insurance and you get 10% off, it might literally cost you $1 a month to have our smoke detector in place. But even if it didn't, like Storm was saying, for $15 a month, you're protecting your property, your family, your pets, and even your neighbors because fires do spread. So to us, it really is a no-brainer. It's just about educating consumers and letting them know that this type of technology is available to them.
And your smoke detector is also tamper-proof, correct?
Yes, and that's one of the factors that leads back to arson. You know, people may want to take down a smoke detector before they light a place on fire to give them plenty of time and give that flame enough time to burn down the house. We have a tamper switch in our smoke detector, so if somebody removes it off its base, it'll instantly send a text message to anybody on that list or everybody on that list, which really works out well in rental properties and also in school environments where kids might want to take down the smoke detector because they're having a party, or in Airbnbs. That's a perfect opportunity where you tell people this is a non-smoking rental, and the first thing they do is take down the smoke detector. Well, you can't do that with ours. You'll instantly send out a text message.
Okay. And I guess I have one last question for you. You come up with a fundraising sponsorship, where you partner up with nonprofits. Can you talk for a couple of minutes on that?
Sure. So one thing that we've seen in the past is, people hold a lot of great dinners and fundraising events, and what they do is auction off different types of items that might be something that they want but not something they need. So we decided to partner with nonprofits, especially with pet rescues, shelters, Veterans Administration, and anybody who would be able to help folks by raising funds. And that's usually the toughest thing, to get people to actually empty their wallets. With our system, when they offer the SAM Smart Detector through these fundraisers, we will give them a discount off of the retail pricing, and then we will donate the balance of that retail cost to that partner. So, for example, with a pet shelter, if they offer our smoke detector to new pet parents and give them a piece of paper educating them about pet fire safety, they'll be able to purchase that smoke detector usually for about 50% off retail, and then the balance, which would be about $38, goes back to that shelter for every single purchase. So it's something that you're offering that can make a difference. It's not just a dinner or something that they would usually bid for. This is something that'll save their lives, and it'll also teach them about pet fire safety for their new family member.
So I think it's a great idea. Storm, any last questions for Z?
No, just that comment that, again, anybody that is not using that type of service. Now, obviously, are you nationwide, Z, or are you just in the local area?
We are nationwide, but we do service the lower 48 states because our system does depend on cellular connectivity, and sometimes we do have issues with that north or different carriers in Hawaii, but in the lower 48 states, we cover every area.
So, again, for all intents and purposes, anybody listening to the program would do themselves a great service by hiring, if not you, somebody else. But worst case scenario, they need to have a monitoring system. And again, if you're talking about just $20 a month to basically prevent, not prevent so much because a fire can start at any time, but to hopefully prevent the loss of property or loss of life, $20 is cheap.
Right.
Yeah, and if you pay quarterly, it's only $14.95. So you're talking about $45 every 3 months.
Yeah, that's a joke. I mean, people that are not doing that, I hate to say it, but it's almost they deserve to have their houses burned down if they don't take advantage of a service like that. It's just ludicrous that somebody wouldn't do it. And like you said, don't wait for your neighbor's house to burn down. It may be your house that burns down, and your neighbor's looking at getting the service then. So get the service now and protect yourself. I mean, it's crazy not to.
Well, let me ask Z. What can you give out your company information, website, how people can get a hold of you?
Sure. So if you go to www.smokealarmmonitoring.com, you could go to the checkout page and use promo code RADIO to get 50% off the cost of the smoke detector for all of your listeners. And again, that's www.smokealarmmonitoring.com, promo code RADIO.
Excellent. Well, hopefully all of the pet people, that are listening to the show, will do it, because if you leave work and your pets are at home, you don't know what trouble they can get into until it's too late. So definitely take a look at smokealarmmonitoring.com. Z, I want to thank you for being our guest. Storm, thanks for all the great questions.
Yes,
thanks
Laurie.
for having us.
All right, guys. Well,
take us out of here, Laurie. I mean, it's 3 hours away from Miller time here on the East Coast.
All right. Well, I'm going to take you out because I want to thank everyone for joining us today on Fraudsters Radio. Join us again next Monday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time live And remember, we do want to hear your stories. You can contact us through the Fraudsters Radio Facebook page. Thanks again, guys. Great show.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.